Welcome back to the Rockman Power Hour, a podcast where we talk to the most interesting people in the world of pop culture and everywhere in between. Really excited about this week's guest. It's someone that my co-host Ryan Stick and I have been friends with forever. Ryan, even a little bit longer than me. My love for this man's work started with his movie Wolf Cop back in 2014, and I followed his career ever since. His movie Dark Match premiered last year at Fantasia, and it is now in its theatrical release, playing across Canada with very special screenings with the cast and with the director at some of these screenings. And we are very happy to be welcoming Lowell Dean to our podcast this week. Welcome back to the Rockman Power Hour. Ryan, listen, I know how much you love Lowell Dean. You're a big fan. For you, it was very important that we get to talk to him again. And I love this guy, man. I'm just happy to see, every time we talk to him, he's doing a little bit better. His films are getting a little bit more recognition. And this year, 2 movies to come out in the same year. He's got Dark Match and he's got Die Alone. So kudos to him. Just tell me quickly your first impressions of Dark Match when you saw it.
Well, we say it later in the interview where, I'm like, hey, look, if Chris Jericho's in a movie, I'm going to watch it. If Lowell Dean makes a movie, I'm going to watch it. Mm-hmm. If it's a horror movie, I'm probably going to watch it. And if all these things happen at once, if Jonathan Cherry farts in the woods, I want to smell it. It's one of those things. So seeing it all come together, it's just, there's an overwhelming sense of pride where I feel like I'm invested in Lowell Dean's career and to see it pay off like this. But this is everyone out there. If you're wondering what this movie even is about, it's about this small wrestling league I believe it's set in Canada. It's been a minute, since Fantasia. But I'm really looking forward to seeing it again in the theater. And it's a small wrestling league, and they get invited for a big payoff to go to this certain place. And there's this kind of weird satanic cult thing going around. And it's a very interesting film. It's a very character-driven film, but it also at the same time it's fucking bonkers too. So
if you're a fan of his work and you were someone who loved like both Wolf Cops, you're gonna like this because it's got a little bit of zany in it. And Lowell tells us the story of how he came up with the idea for Wolf Cop. And I can see, the marriage of two loves, you know what I mean? And I think you could tell this is a marriage of two loves as well, horror and wrestling.
Yeah, for sure. And it's really cool that, it's really cool to see him be able to tell these stories, but also in this movie, he, as crazy as like the dick exploding energy of Wolf Cop, quite literally, it's also at the same time, it's cool to see him flex his muscles of character driven drama in a way, but still make it funny. This is a movie about people and not about effects. So, that's definitely another thing too.
And there's some great wrestling in it as well. I mean,
if
fans of wrestling are going to love this movie. Dark Match is going to be in theaters in Montreal, where we're from. It's going to be screening It's going to be screening February 5th in Montreal. But if you go keyword Dark Match, you'll find everywhere where it's going to be screening, and it's going to be in theaters for a while. I think what we have to stress, Ryan, is that people need to go support films like this when they are in their theatrical release, because that sends a direct message to the distributors and to the theater owners and the chains that, hey, we want to go support these movies and we want to see them in theaters.
Yeah, and buying is voting. Melissa always says that, especially about vegan food and vegan options in restaurants. She's like, I'm going to buy this veggie burger. It's like, I'm not even hungry, but I want them to know that people are buying these things. Please, more veggie burgers. Make this. People want Beyond Meat, all that kind of stuff. So she always said buying is voting. And I'm like, I think that applies to a lot of things that you love. Whether if it's music, whether if it's anything of physical media, if you love something, they pay attention to numbers. They really, really do. So,
Yeah.
You know, instead of seeing Transformers 67, and if you really want to, that's fine. But, you know, give Dark Match a shot too, because, you know, an indie darling like Dark Match, especially a Canadian one, there's not 100 million Canadian films coming out each and every year, especially one made with this much love and precision and, you know, and detail. So check it out.
All right. Check out our chat with Lowell Dean, director, writer, producer, and extraordinaire from the movie Dark Match. Right. So we're trying to set something up for like a Friday. I think it was this past Friday. And anyways, once we got on with you directly, it was just easier to do it this way. So yes, of course, we're always going to make the time to talk to you, man.
Yeah, I've interviewed Lowell like 7 times, and it's usually because I say "What's up."
Yeah. I mean, I will admit it's chaotic for the PR people right now because everything is day and date with this movie. And we are literally like, I've never had this kind of support to go all across Canada with a movie.
It's great.
It's great. Yeah.
And it's great to see that people are, really, embracing, you know, not only the fact that you have a new movie, but the theater experience, and that like they're really pushing the fact that, you know, every place there's going to be Q&As, you know, so it gets people's asses into seats, which I think is really, because we got to see it at Fantasia. So you know, we're the lucky people that actually got to see it in the theater. And when you get to see it in the theater, it's a whole different experience.
Fully agree. I mean, not every movie will be the same at home versus theater, but this one absolutely is like, it's like going to an actual wrestling match. Sometimes if you're just watching it at home alone versus the crowd freaking out, it gets you going.
Yeah, for sure.
Sometimes Fantasia is like this gorgeous filter where you're like, oh man, this experience, but it's always interesting to kind of see it again in a regular cinema where you find yourself listening a little harder. So that's what I'm looking forward to, seeing this movie again, because I thought I got a very good first experience, but at the same time, now knowing everything that happens, now I'm looking for the foreshadowing and kind of like the slow, the interesting thing. Lowell, I just heard you on one of my favorite podcasts, Talk is Jericho. I wonder how you met that guy.
Yeah. Gee, why did we get on there?
Yeah.
That was fun though. What a blast.
So I was listening to you on Talk is Jericho, and you had mentioned, you're like, man, I want to make a movie where 45 minutes in, it seems like one movie, and you're like, and it make people think, why is this a horror movie? And then all of a sudden, boom. And it made me think of From Dusk Till Dawn, actually.
Yeah.
That was a huge inspiration from Dusk Till Dawn. And for the structure of this one, it just started that way. And I kind of broke all my own rules because I've made enough horror at this point where you realize everybody tells you to get their attention immediately. You know, like you've got to have a kill right off the top, and I'm well aware of that. But still, this one just felt like I didn't want to do that. And the talk about like, you know, why do it, how do it? To me, this is a character movie, an ensemble movie, and I just wanted to take the time to get to know the characters and hope that if we delayed what everybody knew was on the tin and was going to happen in the movie, they wouldn't penalize us for it if the whole second half was really intense. That was the hope.
Gotcha. Well, Substance is like that too, and that just got all these amazing award nominations. But it's just like the Substance starts out where it's just like, okay, yeah, here's this aging starlet, and you kind of feel how the world kind of like leaves you behind. And, you know, slowly, you have that last act. And my God, if they started off with that first act, I think it would be a very different thing. And it's amazing how horror audiences, especially when you ramp them up, can accept just about anything as crazy as fucking possible if you pace yourself correctly.
Totally agree. And I think people, what was a really interesting thing with this movie and the challenge is, people often look down on horror, a certain community, and a certain kind of horror, especially. And people also look down, I think, on wrestling, or think they write it off as a certain kind of thing. So to merge these two things that have a rabid fan base and are also often relegated to a corner of, criticism or respect, I knew what I was in for. I mean, I think I secretly was like, no, we're going to try and give this the respect treatment and not go super lowbrow with it. But you know, I'm also never shocked when I see a review. I got used to that with Wolf Cop, where people were like, this is dumb.
Yeah, but let's be honest here, okay? You say that, like horror and wrestling, but let's talk about what's going on right now. The fact that Netflix has that deal with the WWE, that's going to bring so much more attention to wrestling, which it has already. So it's bringing it into literally everybody's living room. That's massive. And horror now is getting respected by all the awards.
The Oscars, yes, exactly.
So it's like the timing of it couldn't be better for you because, you're just talking about two things you love that it's like that perfect time when the rest of the world catches up with things you love and there's that magic moment, and I think you're this movie coming out now in a wide release, when both of those things are like right in everybody's, in the culture's conscience, I think is a great time.
I absolutely agree. I wish I planned it, but it's just dumb luck.
Well, but it's honest. It shows that you're just, like, I think when things are authentic and you talk about things that are very, very close to your heart that aren't, that aren't forced, it comes across. And I just think the timing is just really, really good for this movie.
Absolutely.
So once again, was listening to the great podcast Talk is Jericho, my second favorite behind this one, I guess.
He's just saying that fuck.
I learned a little something about, first of all, Chris Jericho. I admire the shit out of that guy. He's like one of my heroes because he was one of those guys that said, I'm going to be not just one thing. I'm going to be multiple things. I'm going to do music. I'm going to be good at it. Not in a novelty. I'm going to be actually good at it. I'm going to write books. They're going to be great books. And they are, holy shit, great books. An amazing podcaster. And of course, an amazing wrestler. But being a jack of all trades such as that, I hear, Stephen Ugg, and her name's Aisha, correct?
Yeah, Stephen Ogg and Aisha Issa. They're the leads.
Aisha, when we interviewed her on the red carpet at Fantasia, when you say to yourself, I've seen this human before. And with actors, it's tough because you're like, yeah, I've probably seen him in things. But I'm like, no, that's not it. Mm-hmm. And then only today, months and months later, this is back in July. So here we are in January, and I'm washing a dish. And I'm listening to her, and you're talking about, the producer, she was on the transplant. And I'm like, oh my God, I've played a junkie on the transplant, and I rip out my IV and my fake blood goes right in her eye.
Yeah. Well, you were right there next to her. That's exactly right. Yeah. Montreal. Fantastic.
Like, I know she's tall, but my perspective of her was I was lying on a bed and she was leaning over me wearing a doctor's mask looking like, stern. So that's how I met Aisha.
If you have the mask, I guess that can forgive not recognizing her. But transplant shoots in Montreal, right? So she lived there for a while.
Yeah, exactly.
Anyway, people don't know Ryan's an actor. So a lot of people don't know that Ryan actually actively auditions and does stuff. So it's cool in those things. That's kind of cool when you think that you did something and then you're like, oh yeah, you were in something that you did something together, which is cool, kind of rad.
That's super cool. Yeah.
Can I ask you about one of your actors who I absolutely love, Jonathan Cherry?
Yes, I love Jonathan.
Like Jonathan Cherry to me is just one of those guys where it's going to just be that one role that's going to happen where he is just going to fucking explode. And I say this all the time because my son is really, really, getting ready to get into that, the field of acting. Like he's really hungry. He's starting to do stuff. He's really getting into it. And I was telling him, like, man, if you could ever meet someone that would be a great mentor, a guy like Jonathan would probably be perfect. But I look at him and I'm like, he just reminds me of like a young Michael Madsen.
That's interesting. Okay, yeah, and he's another guy who's living in Montreal as well.
Phenomenal actor, man. Like,
I know. I mean, I know.
I know you know. Yeah, I know. But like, it's just great to see him on screen. He just looks so good on screen. He just commits to things, and he has a certain way about him, man. Like he's a star. Like you can see it right away. He just jumps off.
I totally agree, and I feel very lucky to have him not just in all my movies, but as a friend.
Yeah.
And our first experience together was obviously Wolf Cop, and the story of casting him in Wolf Cop, I think, is a perfect example of.
Tell us, please.
Talent. Yeah, sure. I mean, we did a cross Canada casting call for the character of Willie in the first Wolf Cop, and I have a very specific tone, I think, in a lot of my movies, and we put out the sides, and I kid you not, over 100 people for Willie, and I didn't see one in 100 that was even in the right tonal ballpark. Some people, it was really fun. Some people were being very broad, like really ridiculous with it, almost like over the top buffoonery, and some people were treating it serious, like very Shakespearean serious, which was fun to hear some of those lines that way. But he was and I was literally like, we're screwed. Like, he was one of the last people cast. And I just remember, I don't know how we got to him, but someone got him to put in a tape, and I saw him say 2 sentences, and I was like, I paused and I was like, go, get him. I knew in one sentence that he knew the movie we were making.
Yeah.
And he has this weird ability to be in it in a slightly heightened reality, but not mocking it. You know what I mean? So we're creating our own, I think, with these films, hopefully tonal reality. And he's usually the person dialed slightly higher than everyone else. Like, I love a lot of people playing it almost like a drama. Yeah. But with him playing to the other extreme of the ceiling, you kind of know the world we're in. And in every movie, he's not just a great actor, but I also learned on Wolf Cop that he has great abilities with writing and improv. So many actors just come in and say what's in the script, which is amazing. Whether it works for them or not, they sometimes find their way there. But he was the only one who would be ready to say the script and would do it every time. But if he was struggling with something, or he could tell I was struggling with something, he'd flip over a script and there'd be so much scribbling. And I was like, what is all that? He's like, 12 alts for every line I say. So I was like, wait a minute, really? And we got used to just firing him off in like one take. And as an editor, what a gift.
And I'm telling you, that actor is somebody that, mark my words, and I'll put money behind it. I'll put, my whole reputation behind it. That guy is going to someone is going to grab him and put him in something that is going to give him it's only a matter of time that guy's going to become a household name. I can see it. And what I love, I could see him in Michael Mann's Heat, but I could also see him in one of your movies. Like, I could see him in so many different things, because
that's the crazy thing. Yeah. With his tone, he could be in the drop dead comedy or a drama.
Yeah.
And I think it would work wonderfully.
Your cast, though, is Ryan was referring to, to Og and to the others. Like, you really have a strong cast in this one, man. It's phenomenal.
Yeah. I agree. It's a great ensemble, and it was really fun to put together. I actually hate casting. It's my least favorite part of prep and filmmaking, because it's like heartbreaking. It's like asking a lot of people out on dates. And sometimes people you like to date aren't available, or you're not available. So it's and other people are making shots, and there are arranged marriages in the whole mix. I'm putting too many metaphors here, but it's just not always fun. But when that part's over and you see who you have, and when you have a group as diverse as we did in this film in terms of actors, wrestlers, the stunt choreographers, stunt players, it was just a really unique family.
Yeah. My favorite role that Jonathan Cherry ever did, well, besides in Wolf Cop, of course, is I really liked him in The Goon, because he had these lines that just, so his tonality, he kind of brings it in, but in this movie, he's kind of he's over the top, but he's a wrestling promoter in the 80s when there's just so much cocaine going around, and there's this I was talking to you at Fantasia, and I think you brought this up. No, he brought this up. He brought up that he based it off of character he saw of a real life guy who had this wrestling promotion in the 80s. He saw on this show called Dark Side of the Ring, and that this guy named Herb something, he just was obsessed with cocaine, cowboy boots. He had all this money, and he'd book a stadium, and it would be a quarter full. It was just a fucking disaster, but he was just so gung-ho, and he based it off of that. So I thought that was really interesting.
Yeah, eyes bigger than the stomach, cowboy boots, mullet. And this was actually, I can say, of all the movies Cherry and I have done together, this is, I think, the least amount of improv he's done, which was fascinating to me. Or maybe Die Alone was a little less, but I mean, certain things like the ring announcement stuff, those were perfectly designed moments to let him go off book, and he never disappoints.
Yeah.
What's it like for you to have two movies that are kind of like both making their mark on the world in the same year? That's got to be nuts for you.
That's true.
It's the best of times and the worst of times.
Yeah.
You feel like you're trying to do right by both of them, but it's also, I mean, let's be honest, indie Canadian films, the drop in the bucket of recognition and awareness people get for it. So I sometimes joke, hey, having two movies out right now, two indie Canadian films, it's almost like having one bigger movie. So, and that's not even true. It's still not anywhere close, but I love them both. They're both weirdly personal. And the thing that I, in the positive column, love the most is they're so different. Like I wrote and directed both of them, and they are very different, but they're like my children. I just love them. So it's just been a really fun year to get them out there, but so exhausting.
Yeah. So you have Chris Jericho in the movie. So the thing about him is that he's been around for decades, but he's not peeing in a bag or has a drug problem. Like so many of these wrestlers, like you see in The Wrestler, by the time they get to his age with his experience, they're just so beaten and broken down. But he seems to have this zest for life. He's still going, and I think we have DDP Yoga to thank for that. But what was it like working with Chris?
I think he's prolific. I think you mentioned it earlier. He's like the busiest man I've ever met. Like, it's crazy to me how much he has going on, and that he's still a good guy, and he's still like he does about 1,000 things in a day, and he'll still find time to text me and be like, "How was the screening yesterday?" You know what I mean?
He gets it, man. He's like, you could tell right away. Like, I just saw the way he was dealing with people on the carpet at Fantasia.
Yeah,
like,
he's a real showman.
He is, but he also I think like another guy who has that kind of same vibe as The Rock.
Yeah.
And maybe it has something to do with wrestling, but The Rock is massive of a star. He is. When you meet him and you're talking to him directly, and he's giving you that 3 or 4 minutes. It's between you two. It's not about who's coming next, and you feel he's locked in on you. And that's a skill that, when you're massively famous, is not easy to not only acquire, but to keep. And Jericho has that.
He totally does. And nothing but professional. Yeah. And I knew I had nowhere. I kind of assumed he would be, because my previous movie, which was like years ago now, was something called Supergrid. And I worked with Jay Rezzo, who's Christian Cage. And that was my first experience working with a wrestler as an actor. And he had a lot of dialogue, and I remember being a little nervous about like all he had to do. And he nailed it so quickly with such precision that he puts like a lot of like actors to shame. And I even went to him after, like, this was a day we weren't going to finish on time, and now I think we could finish early because of the fact that you nailed that. We're obviously still going to do 2 or 3 takes to make sure we have it, but you took so much of my worry away. So by the time I wrote this movie and had the time to bring on Jericho, and I knew his character, the Prophet, had so much to say, I didn't even hesitate. I was giving him like full days of soliloquies to do. And I don't know if he had any nerves about that. He didn't show it. He's just like, "What are we doing? Go say these 3 pages." Okay. So he's a true professional for all he's doing and the millions of plates he's spinning. It's like you said, when we were doing it, he was present. It didn't feel like he was just there to say his thing and leave. He would still hang out on set. He was interested in the stunts. It was a fun time.
Amazing. My friend Joss is a huge Jericho fan. He even has sideburns apparently because of Chris Jericho, and he had seen the movie with us. I did not know he was that big of a fan, but I'm a fan. And my friend Yannick gave me his first book, and it's out of print, and it was autographed to somebody else by the time he bought it secondhand. So as I was walking towards Chris to finally pony up the nerve to say, "Hey, can you just cross out this name and write mine?" This other fanboy cuts right in front of me, almost shoulder checks me out of the way to go get a selfie. And that was kind of like the last moment. So I thought that was kind of funny, because in hindsight, I'm like, I think it would have been probably memorable if I checked him back. But no, you can't do that. But I'm like, it is what it is. But here it is. And it was really cool to see you having your moment at Fantasia, because I remember the first Wolf Cop screening. And for you to come all the way back and seeing you there with Wolf Cop 2, it's just, just been this evolution, and this red carpet was almost intimidatingly professional. It was like very big, very cool. The PR did a great job. They treated us great. Yeah.
Our group did a great job. Department 9, the production company behind Dark Match, knows how to do it right. Yeah. And it's funny you bring up Fantasia and Wolf Cop, because it was my introduction to Fantasia. I knew nothing of what to expect.
We talked before your screening, like that morning.
Yeah, I remember. Yeah. I was like, I knew nothing about it. Yeah. And I maybe told you this story already, but we were pulling up to the screening of Wolf Cop, and I saw the lineup around the block, and my instinct was furious. I was like, no one's coming to Wolf Cop. They're in line for whatever the hell this is. And so I was like, that's for Wolf Cop. And I was like, what? People want to like live up here? And the theater was packed, and I loved it so much. It was one of the top, probably 5 most memorable screenings of my life. But I felt guilt because none of my people were there, you know? So from that point on, anytime I did a movie that I thought was Fantasia style, which is about at least half of them, I say to all my people, like, if this gets in Fantasia, you better be there, because it's going to change your life and reinvigorate you for the next movie. And that's why when you get to Dark Match, you noticed everyone and their brother was there, because they didn't want to miss that experience.
True. Yeah. Very, very true. I mean, there were so many people there that night, and it just felt like it felt like an event, you know, and that's how there's always a handful of movies that play at Fantasia where you feel like you're seeing something special. I remember when we saw Talk to Me, it got its North American premiere at Fantasia, and it was like, wow. I mean, you felt like something was special.
The walls were vibrating, like you could really feel something was going on. And speaking of something going on, I gotta say it was so cool and so refreshing, because I barely saw a trailer. I'm like, I just want to see Lowell's movie. Like, Lowell movie, Chris Jericho, horror, I'm in. Any of those things would have made me show up. So them all together was great. But I was thrilled to see Michael Eklund.
Yeah.
Oh my God. I've interviewed Michael Eklund over the years at Fantasia, and our Fantasia friend, I'll say. It's like this little existence that, like, you know, the Fantasia existence with you meet friends and then you remember them like 10 years later.
And collect them all.
Yeah, exactly.
I love Eklund. He's obviously a brilliant performer. He's wonderful at a lot of things, and our movie, he's obviously playing the penultimate Eklund creep. You know, he's a really good Satanist, and but he's also just a phenomenal guy, and he's someone we've been circling each other for a while now. This is just the first one it worked out, but I'm always on the lookout. I love working with Canadians. That's like a very big thing for me, which feels very apropos right now. I'm always seeking out Canadians, often first. And then if I found out you have any connection to Saskatchewan, that's like, I know, because there's something so egoless, you know, like, especially when you shoot in Saskatchewan, you always expect it to be like, oh, I got to go make a movie in Saskatchewan, you know? And I think the mood on that is shifting a bit, but, you know, learning that Eklund was from Saskatoon, that was like, okay, ding, ding, you're on my radar. And just to switch over to Die Alone for 1 second, we were going to shoot that movie in BC. You know, obviously everyone knows BC is beautiful. It's the crown jewel of Canadian beauty, and especially in summer to shoot at. So we were going to shoot Die Alone in BC, and Carrie Ann Moss is the lead in that film. That's where she's from. And then things changed with our financing structure, and we got some Saskatchewan money, so it made sense to shift the movie there. And I remember dreading being like, oh man, was she so excited to do this movie because it was in Saskatchewan? And the second we told her, she was like overjoyed, excited. She's like, I've never made a movie in Saskatchewan. And every minute she was there, she was just soaking it in. She's like, I love this place. It's like, and it wasn't fake. You could tell it wasn't. So
that's awesome.
I feel pride for Sask now, especially.
Yeah. And I think, you know, when you get certain, I think when you're from certain places, you know, like a place like that has massively harsh winters, you know, that is usually, you know, salt of the earth people that are hardworking. That's in the fabric of you know, of people that are from there usually. So I think, you know, it's like if you're from the East Coast, you know about winter, you know about, you know, getting up and de-icing your car and salting, you know, like anybody that deals with winter knows some harsh realities of it. So being from one of the harshest winters ever, they're super harsh there, and they're Canadian. I mean, it's like a win-win.
It's totally a win-win. And the other unsung thing is often like, sure, the winters are horrible. I mean, right now I'm in Winnipeg. Yesterday I was in Edmonton. We're all cold on the prairies. We have some bad days. But shooting in any of those places in summer, I'm going to say it's better. It's
I believe it. I believe it. I believe, like, we started doing Winnipeg Comic-Con maybe about 4 years ago, and we would go, and it's just, the people are so appreciative of the event, and they're just so happy to, you know, to meet some of these guests. And, you know, Bruce Campbell was in Winnipeg, and it was the first show he's ever done with us in Winnipeg. He loved it, and, you know, hit the screening for Army of Darkness, sold out, not even a question, not an empty seat, and people were into it. So it's something special about prairie people, that's for sure.
Yeah, I haven't been to Saskatchewan since I was 23, and when I was on tour with my band, and it was rad. I fucking love every part of Canada. It's really cool when you're like, you gotta get outside your bubble and just go across the country, because it's funny how The Simpsons and other people just generalize Canadians to like one fucking accent.
Yeah.
But then you look in New York City. Yeah, you look at New York City and you're like, there's 6 distinct accents within one city. Like, imagine an entire country. But
and I will say, like, that's been the coolest part about promoting Dark Match right now. Like, this week we are hitting most major Canadian cities, and prior to that, like, Dark Match had a really nice festival run in a lot of places in Canada. So it's really cool to not just share this movie with Canada, but also see the different reactions. Like, it's not to get too in the weeds, but there are whole kinds of layers of jokes in this film that go without a single laugh in certain centers. And I know for a fact in certain, like the prairies, there are some lines that just crush. And then like, further east or west, it's just like, okay, was that a joke?
Ryan, did you show Lowell what you procured recently?
Oh yeah, this the Wolf Cop vinyl.
Great vinyl. I love that.
Where did you? I wish that's you know how hard that is to find now, right?
Yeah, a friend of mine was generous enough, based on my reaction to it, was generous enough to sell it to me. So thank you, Justin. I really appreciate that. But it's it's a great bit of music. But Lowell, I have one issue. Why isn't the Wolf Cop rap on here?
You know what? I couldn't tell you. The only thing I can think of is maybe the rap wasn't done at the time that they were finishing that, but that doesn't make sense because the vinyl would have come out after the film. So you'll have to ask the producers. I
have a Monster Squad vinyl and has everything on it. Every orchestral score, the Monster Squad theme or whatever. They have everything except a montage song like Rock Until You Drop. And I'm sure that it's probably the most expensive song on the entire soundtrack. So sometimes that happens, or sometimes someone just doesn't give the okay. I mean, it happens, but it's just such a beautiful, really cool.
You're right. There's no reason. Now my head's like, why is it not on there?
And well, repress.
Repress. Or
there you go.
Because your movies lend themselves so much to, fans thinking, what else can we get from this? Like merch, soundtracks, physical release. Are you, now that you've made several films, are you more at a place where you start to think about back end stuff like that a little bit more seriously? Like after seeing what happened with Wolf Cop, the physical releases, the soundtracks, Fright Rags doing t-shirts. Is there a part of you that says, we've got to try to retain some of that? We got to try to have a little bit more control on the peripherals?
That's an interesting question. I mean, the short answer is not really. It's so hard to get a movie made. However, I will say a longer answer would be yes, because I'm starting to gravitate more towards being a producer myself or being involved in that side of things.
Sure.
And I think a lot of the movies, it depends on the project, honestly. Like a movie like Dark Match.
Oh my God, so much potential.
But I mean, your first battle is always who's making it and are they someone I can trust? And again, luckily I've partnered with this company out of Alberta called Department 9. And in the agreement, my biggest priority was, can we make this movie right? And then my second biggest priority was, if people dig it, can we make a sequel? So to me, those are a movie like this. That's where the fight is at first. And it's more like, do I trust and like the people I'm with? And if I do, the conversation can be evergreen in terms of where we go with it. Right. So I feel like I'm at the beginning of this mountain. Wolf Cop was a different mountain. And a very challenging mountain, but also huge lessons and wonderful experiences for learning. And I think in the future, I probably will be writing things that have the Wolf Cop spin in terms of this can go places. But right now, it's just like Die Alone was a one-off. I don't think that'll have any kind of sequels or spin-offs. Probably not. But, it depends, again, on the story. That's like this. Dark Match is like, maybe, but physical release is my big push right now.
That's what I was going to say. So are you in talks with some interesting partners for physical?
We're not there yet, but we are in talks of it's got to happen. How do we do it? We've got some really great extras. And I think now more than ever, I see the value of physical. I always have, but it felt like a losing battle for a long time. And now with streamers, I go to watch a movie at least once a week that I love. Not one specific one, but just like you get that memory flash. I got to watch this. And then you spend an hour trying to see which service it's on. Yeah. It's not there. I bought it, but it's gone all of a sudden. So it's gross in that respect. And also I can't have 10 streaming services right now. I'm an independent filmmaker, not rich.
Yeah, something interesting about, like, you guys were talking about merchandise. I was going to make a joke before to say to you, hey, if you were to make a dark match video game, what console do you think it would be on, considering it's set in the 80s? And I'm like thinking, would you intentionally have to make it like this shitty Atari game, but just based on its?
Or would you want it to be that? I mean,
yeah, there you go.
I would freaking love a dark match video game. I would love the wrestling action figures and like a ring, you know?
I think the wrestling figure is a good choice, though, but to go with those 90s style ones, you know, where the molds are good, but, you know, they're kind of crap and everyone loves it. Or those big rubber figures that don't move at all from the 80s. I think that would be the best.
That's what I had as a kid. I mean, I would love Enigma Jones, an action figure.
Or what about a wrestling buddy of the fuck?
when you think of, but it's true. Like you have made movies that lend themselves to people wanting stuff. And like, I look at Wolf Cop being, you know, having 2024 being the 10th anniversary of it. It would be great to see that movie get a re-release from, like, you know, like a Vinegar Syndrome or from an Arrow.
Well, wouldn't that be great? I mean, I'll tell you what, my dream is to do a director's cut of that movie.
Oh man, those two, like, I can already see them in the Arrow video hard box, you know, with the little poster.
Oh, that would be the best. I mean, Wolf Cop 2 is very close. I mean, it's pretty much the movie I wanted it to be, with a couple exceptions of a couple shots. But I mean, I can't be total George Lucas on that. But Wolf Cop 1, there's just enough that I would change that I'm not going to say I'll lie awake in bed saying I should fix it, but that movie was just a weird, rare anomaly in that, because of the Cineku experience and because of the partnership with Cineplex for theatrical release, which no one's going to say was a bad thing. We wanted it, but we were like a no-money Marvel movie, you know, like while we were editing the movie, we had a release date. So that was stressful, and a lot of things had to slip by just to get the movie done, right?
Sure.
I didn't finish the edit the way I wanted to. And there were some compromises in VFX, and some things, frankly, were cut. Like, I will say I would put in at least 2 more minutes of jokes and penis content. So.
I love it.
Inches are minutes in
exactly.
Movie world. Yeah,
see, even that's a great way to market it. It's like
2 more inches or minutes.
2 more inches. Additional inches. Yeah.
So 2 things. Number one, I thought, maybe someday, because you're like an actual filmmaker, you could do this. You just make a movie and you call it Part 2. Even though it's the first movie, you call it Part 2. So then when you make a prequel, no one gives you any shit because you're just finally making Part 1.
That is funny. You know what? Like, that's the idea of that is exhausting. Just because it's like, as funny as it is, like, I'm always like, why does no one ever make like a joke Hallmark movie where it starts as a Hallmark movie and then it goes crazy? And then I realized, when you're making a movie, it's super hard and everybody's putting their money on the line. People are like, how can this be safe? How can we not be insane? So I love what you're suggesting. Yeah. I thought about Wolf Cop, and
that's it. Tell me tell me about the first idea, where that came into your head.
It is the dumbest thing ever, and it's true. So I'll say it. I was ready to make the jump from short films to features.
Yeah.
I had shot a music video with a werewolf, and it was really fun. I grew up with Universal Monsters, so I was like, I want to do more of this. And as you know, my friend Emerson Ziffel is a makeup effects artist, so we were brainstorming what to do. But I was the more analytical side of me was really interested in doing a cop movie, a movie about a detective solving a murder in a small town. And I literally had those 2 ideas, and I had written notepads, and I had them on the board, and I had them in front of me, and I said, this one or that one, this one or that one. And I had that quick thought of having my cake and eating it too. And like, wait, what if he's trying to solve murders, but he's the cause of them because he's a werewolf and he doesn't know it. He's literally chasing his own pun intended tail. And then I was like, well, shit, I think that's pretty good. And then I soft pitched it to a few of my friends. And I do this a lot. My friends endure at least once a week me saying, is this a thing? Is this a thing? And everyone said, yeah, I'm interested in that. And then I wasn't writing it. I was living my life. They'd keep coming to me and saying, where are you at with Wolf Cop? As if like I worked for them. So I knew then, like, after about 6 months of hesitating, I was like, I got to run at this. This feels right.
All right. Let's talk about the graphic novel quick.
Yeah.
Sure. Yeah. Atomic Victory Squad, another passion project. And, our talk earlier about IP and control, after a lot of frustration and heartache trying to do things with, like, say, get properties off the ground or continue things that I started, Emerson was like, do you have any cool ideas that, we could just mount easily on our own? And I told him about Atomic Victory Squad, and he was like, why the hell have you not made this? I said, because it would be an animated series or a comic. How do you afford things like that, right? So we went in blind like idiots. We did an Indiegogo. We raised just enough money to finance an issue. We sold enough of that to finance the second one. The last couple we financed on our own. And so we now have 5 chapters, which will be a graphic novel. And the only downside, the reason it's not out in the world is because we've been blessedly busy with these 2 movies. But in 2025, I want to take that and get it as a graphic novel, hopefully get it out to cons, because most people, like you guys are a rare exception, it exists, but most people have never seen it, they've never heard of it. So the cool thing to me is it's now a full story. I'm not begging people to trust me about these characters. I can say, here's a full origin story.
Right.
Not just 5 chapters. We had the brilliant artist Javier Cava, who lives in Spain, do an epilogue too. So it's a beautiful value-added graphic novel if I can just find time to print it and get it out.
Yeah. It's I really fell in love with the characters and the story arc. It's been a minute. I have all the single issues, but it's been a minute. But there's this character that's a cow that's from another planet, and when he grows up, everybody he has he has udders, and everyone's giving him shit about it. And he's he was originally a sidekick, and just I don't know. I've been obsessed with Batman and Robin my whole life, but I never thought I could be Batman. But I'm like, I think I could be Robin. I could, I'll be the long pants holding a big stick Robin.
Yeah.
Not so much the elf shoes and the green tidy whities, but yeah, I could be Robin. So anyways, seeing that and him growing into his own hero, and not the damage, but the shit he can't let go. I thought that was very interesting.
You're fully right. It is the shit you can't let go. And the thing is, I forgot to mention, is I made these characters up when I was a kid. And the graphic novel, the fun part about it is I took characters that I made with love as a preteen and teen, and now that I'm a jaded mid-40s man, I took these characters and I gave them all my trauma. So there is a surface colorfulness, but then the character who grows up to be invincible was a sidekick named Cowboy, and he's saving their lives, and all they want to talk about is, why do you have udders? What's your gender? You're a freak. So I love the characters.
Yeah. Before we go, I got to ask you, who are your, besides Chris Jericho, of course, with all this research and you getting into wrestling and everything, who are some of your top favorite wrestlers?
It's a good question. I mean, I will say, like, one of the characters that inspired the lead in our movie, Misbehave, was Junkyard Dog. That was a character that I loved from back in the day. And I'm going to go actually very local and say my favorite Saskatchewan wrestler, because, I think he deserves props, is Wavell Star. He's the First Nation sensation. He's a part of High Impact Wrestling. He's been in other leagues as well. But he was my introduction to wrestling in Saskatchewan. I followed him around for a documentary I was trying to do. And he actually, being a local actor and wrestler, I couldn't get him in Dark Match, unfortunately, because we shot in Alberta. He's in both Wolf Cop films. He has a cameo being punched by Tina in the second one. In the first Wolf Cop, he's the guy who fights Wolf Cop in the barn when they crash the barn in. And not the guy who gets his face ripped off, but he's the guy who, I think, he rips his arm off and Wolf Cop beats him with his own arm. So I've loved wrestlers for a long time. And, you have the ones, the inaccessible ones on the screen that you grow up with, like Andre the Giant, Junkyard Dog, and obviously the Hulk Hogan's of it all. But then you have the ones you get to work with, like Jay Rezzo and Chris Jericho. And then you have, people like Wavell Star, who are like right in your community, kicking ass and taking names.
Who are your top werewolves besides the Wolf Cop one?
I mean, Lon Chaney. I think Teen Wolf, that was a big one for me. I mean, I think by the time I became a filmmaker, American Werewolf was my standard, because, you watch that transformation sequence, and I love the tone of that movie too. But if I'm being truly honest, the werewolf I grew up with and fell in love with was Teen Wolf. I was Teen Wolf for Halloween when I was 7 or 8, so that stuck with me.
I bought Jason the Monster Squad on 4K, and we watched it together. And it was his first one.
It's my first time watching it. I'd never seen it. It's like one of those movies
that's a weird movie, hey?
But it's good. It's like there's 2 movies this year that I saw that are cult classics that I had never seen, that I was almost embarrassed that I had never seen because I've seen so much. But there's always stuff you haven't seen, and Monster Squad was one of them, and Trick or Treat, the 85.
I literally bought you both of those.
Yeah, I know. And Trick or Treat was the other one. Like, you've seen Trick or Treat, right?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
I mean, what a great movie. And I was just like, man, like, how did I miss these?
It's true. Monster Squad is like, I feel like it's something I would have made. I wish.
Yeah, no, it's true. It's true.
About making a movie like that, and I love the tone of it. You know what I mean? It's like, I remember as a kid watching it and being like, "Who is it? Is this for me? It feels too dangerous."
Yeah.
And then it's too kiddie sometimes for adults, but then a lot of the 80s have those movies that they've initially failed, but then would be found later on.
Yeah.
Right.
And that's the kind of nice thing of horror. It's always kind of like a second, third chance type thing. Because
believe me, I know this firsthand. You know, like I've made so many things that come out and I'm like, well, that was a waste of time. And then years later, like, I mean, I will say Wolf Cop's the prime example. I was very underwhelmed with how people responded to it. And here we are years later, I'm screening it almost every year somewhere, or people are asking about it. So I love that movies aren't a rock concert where it's one and done or something, or it's a specific in-person event. Even when I go to a movie and the theater's half full or it's a bad screening, sometimes it's Fantasia and the movie lives forever.
Yep. And listen, Wolf Cop is always one that, we carry the Wolf Cop flag quite proudly everywhere we go.
Badge.
The badge. Yeah, you wear the badge.
When I showed up backstage after interviewing Gowan, and I had that, and he's like, "Oh man, he is the best. Yeah. He is the best."
Gowan's amazing. Gowan remembered that Jason had a co-host when because I couldn't go to the show. He's like, "Oh, your co-host can make it or something," and I'm just like, when I heard that, I'm just like, dude, I fucking don't remember anyone ever. Like, this is so nice.
And you can't fake being that good of a dude.
You know? No, he is a good dude. He's a really, really good dude. Thank you so much, man. Really appreciate you taking the time. Really appreciate it. And best of luck with all this. Of course, if people are across Canada, the screenings are happening now. They go well into what date?
I mean, it's going to keep playing in theaters until I think they kick us out for whatever that big thing is. But we're doing our screenings across Canada up until February 8th.
And there's going to be some kind of event in Montreal, correct? Like
I think on the screening. Yeah.
February 5th.
February 5th, there's a screening. I sadly won't be there because I'll be in Regina. Regina hasn't had a Dark Match screening, and I had Fantasia. So I got to give the hometown love, but that doesn't mean Montreal will be underrepresented. I believe Jean Frenette, our stunt coordinator, will be there. Jonathan Cherry will be there. I believe Aisha Issa, our lead, will be there. So if you are Maurice Roy, who did the...
shout out to Maurice.
Shout out to Maurice, wonderful Maurice. He did some of the designs and the art in our film and some of the specific insignias. I don't want to spoil anything, but you should go to that one if you're in Montreal because the people will be there.
Amazing. Well, you should next time say, "I'm sorry, Montreal. I can't make it to the screening because I'm going to be deep in Regina."
Sorry that I let you down by not going.
No, you don't have. I'm glad he said it and you didn't. Thanks, man.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot, man.
Thanks, guys.
What a great dude. Yeah, I'm trying to remember how many times I've actually spoken to him. Like I said in the interview, the first time I ever met him was mere hours before the first screening of Wolf Cop, and he didn't know what was in store for him. Yeah. And I did.
Yeah. Well, yeah, of course. I mean, that's the thing. When you're not a Fantasia aficionado and you're coming with something for the first time, you don't know what's going to happen. And when it does happen, you're so happy for them. And Lowell's someone that we're always going to cheer for. You know, he's just, not only is he a good dude, but he's just a really good filmmaker and he makes really interesting stuff that hits. So I'm interested, I'm always interested to see the trajectory of his career, and so far following it, he's just always on the up.
Yeah, I was a big fan of his comic book, Atomic Victor Squad. I had him on. I used to have a show called Ryan Stick Show during the pandemic, and I had him on for that because I was just it's not just because he was my friend. I thought the writing was literally hilarious.
Yeah.
And there's a character in it that, dare I say, you would play well. Like if he ever made a live action movie, I can't remember the name of the character at the moment, but I'm thinking like literally, I'm like, every time I read, I'm like, oh fuck, Rockman would kill this. If he ever, if it was an animated series or something, I think it's called, his name's Bob or something. It's a really cool character. Yeah, for sure.
Well, I know that I think we spoke to him also when we were doing the auctions for Comic-Con during the pandemic too. Just to give him a shout out. So it'll be interesting to see that hit the shelves this year. The compilation of all of those issues. And man, guys like Lowell, you want to support him. He's the kind of guy that if there's going to be Wolf Cop action figures or like you have the vinyl or any of that stuff, you're going to want to pick it up because it's supporting his vision and it just makes people more aware of it, like buying a Wolf Cop t-shirt or any of that stuff. So Dark Match is in theaters now. There's going to be a very special screening of it that is going to be happening in Montreal on February 5th and in a lot of local theaters across Canada. So make sure you check out Dark Match. Check it out in the theaters. You can go to cineplex.com now and get your tickets for it. It is playing, and man, definitely worth seeing in the theaters because it is a glorious thing to see on a big screen. That is for sure.
Absolutely. Get in the ring.
Get in the ring and get dirty. Big shout out to my co-host, Ryan Stick. A big shout out to our producer, Julia Kajerski. Shout out to Audio Technica Canada and to everyone else involved with the podcast. And to all of you, until the next time, we'll see you on the Rockman Power Hour. Hey, thanks so much for watching the podcast. We really appreciate your support. And if you're enjoying the podcast, click this link right over here to watch the next episode and click right over here and subscribe. And that way you won't miss anything.